1 2 3 1 2 3.
One more time.
1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Yep. Just one last time.
1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Good morning. Happy Monday, fellow Rotarians and guests. Let's do this today. For those of you I don't know, my name is Cindy Peterson, proud to be president of Downtown Rotary. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in reciting the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? I'd like to invite Angie Hillstead up for our invocation. While she makes her way, I will share a sobering announcement. Will Schaefer, who was long time executive director for McCross and Boys Ranch and a Rotarian for 51 years of this club, passed away. Walsh, excuse me. Okay. Angie.
Thank you, President Cindy, fellow Rotarians. Please join me in prayer if you wish. Dear Lord, we are living in a time where our world and our country are faced with what seems like unrelenting challenge and uncertainty. Wars and political unrest, tragic accidents, senseless crimes, and national disasters can make it hard for us to look to the future with hope and optimism. Yet we know that when we follow your path, we will find goodness. And so, Lord, we are here today, gathered in this space to work together to make Sioux Falls a community filled with hope and optimism for the future. Thank you for your blessings and for your guidance. Amen.
Well, once again, I want to thank all of you and welcome you to Downtown Rotary. I also want to welcome our junior Rotarians, Dawson McCauley from Jefferson, Aaron Cassing from O'Gorman, and speaking today are Abigail Dewin from Roosevelt and Alex Panic from Washington. As we move into Rotary business, I would like to invite Matt Paulson up for a new member induction. And while Matt makes his way, you may have noticed that Matt has stood up here a couple of times this Rotary year, and he has broken the record and recruited more new Rotarians than any other Rotarian. And Matt, I just want to thank you for your commitment to this mission and for inviting others to be part of it.
The slow and steady hostile takeover of Downtown Rotary continues. Today I have the privilege of introducing you to J.L. Thorpe. J.L. is the founder and CEO of Game Day Social Apparel. She's got a long history in the fashion industry, and in just a few years she has built a nationally known brand in the competitive industry of licensed college apparel. J.L.'s day-to-day involves leading the creative direction of the company, creating key relationships, and managing the company's international supply chain. Game Day Social has experienced a lot of growth since it launched in 2019, but JL is committed to keeping the company in South Dakota. And one of her things is to prove that really disruptions in the market can happen in South Dakota in what many call flyover country. When JL is not traveling or working with her Brookings and Sioux Falls team, she can be found with her husband Brian and their 3 boys, whom they've chosen to homeschool to give them a hands-on travel-rich educational experience in the midst of scaling a company. JL is also a longtime advocate for small business in the public policy space. She served on the Brookings City Council for 7 years. She and her husband Brian moved to Sioux Falls last fall, and their family is loving it so far. So please welcome JL. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you to the fellow Rotarians for having me. It's been fun to see some familiar faces and also make new friends. It was actually just thinking as Matt was reading my intro about my journey in getting to Sioux Falls with my family, and people ask me all the time, well, why did you guys move to Sioux Falls? And I was in Brookings for a long time, and it's kind of, honestly, as I look around the room, this is a good symbol of our choosing to move to Sioux Falls is just the engagement of the community, just the vibrancy, and just a bigger community. There's just more opportunities, more people, more things going on. But what I was thinking as he was reading the intro was I had coffee with Matt probably about a year ago, and we were just kind of talking, and he's like, why don't you guys live in Sioux Falls? And it actually kind of started, I mean, we had been already kind of thinking about it and sort of wanting to go this direction, and so I kind of forgot about that till he was standing here, and just as that thought started to percolate, it just kind of made a lot of sense for our family, but also our company. And so I really kind of followed my team. Most of our team is in Sioux Falls, and they were commuting, and so I decided to join them down here. I am loving it. It's been awesome. We've been here just for a few months. As Matt said, I love community involvement. I'm kind of a political nerd. In fact, when we were looking at houses down here, I said to Brian, like, I think maybe let's look in Minnehaha County. I just love how engaged the political community is there. I'd love to get involved. And he just goes, sounds like we should look at houses in Lincoln County. So anyway, just excited to get to meet more and more of you and just continue to build our business in Sioux Falls. So thank you again for having me.
I'll now invite Kaylee Etram up to introduce our junior Rotarian speakers today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am excited to introduce you to two tremendous students. But first, I have the opportunity to go off script, and I love a good opportunity to go off script. So I'd like Cindy to come up here just really quick. Come on. I knew her face would look like that. Come on. And I have two friends who are going to help me. It's not often you get to preside over a Rotary meeting on your birthday, so thank you for letting us celebrate with Cindy. Okay, on to our first tremendous student. Abby Dewin is from Roosevelt High School. She's involved in basketball, Cancer Awareness Club, PEP Club, Best Buddies, Unified Sports, Link Crew, tutoring, National Honor Society, and FCA. She's involved in Collision and also works at His Ark, which is a daycare center. She plans to attend Minnesota State University Mankato and major in elementary education to become a teacher. Help me welcome Abby Dewin.
Hello. To start, I would like to thank everyone for the privilege of being able to attend this month's meetings. Attending the last couple of Mondays has shown me how involved community members are and displays the devotion you have to our city. Throughout my high school career, I have had the amazing opportunity to be involved in many different things and create special bonds with others, specifically developing bonds with peers, children, and adults in my personal life. The relations created with kids have evolved through my daycare employment, volunteering, and children's ministry at church, and a course I took this year called Teacher Pathway. Also, I have acquired connections with my peers and adults through a variety of activities, clubs, student leadership, and peer mentoring. I have learned that the expertise to building meaningful relations is vital to success. I aspire to be a positive role model for younger generations, and working in a setting with kids has given me many opportunities to achieve this. I am considered a float teacher at a daycare center, meaning that I am put in many classrooms ranging from children 10 weeks to elementary schoolers. This job has provided me with nothing but positive relationships with the children, their parents, coworkers, and my bosses. At school, in Teacher Pathway, a class that provides students with what being a teacher really looks and feels like, I get to go into a second grade classroom at Oscar Howe once a week, helping these students excel in their math and sight word abilities, developing strong relationship with both the students and the teacher. At Roosevelt High School, each one of my teachers has impacted me in a significant and different way. With every club and activity that I have participated in, there has been an advisor or coach who I have developed a special bond with. As the president of the Cancer Awareness Club, the advisor, Ms. Kemes, has become a great friend who guides me with anything in life. Along with the adult relationships that I've created these past years, I've also developed friendships with my peers. I peer tutor an Algebra 1 class where I get to teach 9 students each day and develop friendships with many of them. I feel as if I have become a great model for the underclassmen here at Roosevelt, and hope that my time spent here will leave a positive impact. I've used my special skill of developing relations in every aspect of my life, and it has shown me how powerful it is to connect with those I surround myself with. Through the bonds that I have created already, they will continue to support me through my life and be people who I can go to for advice. In the near future, I will continue to develop bonds with those I connect with at college. Developing relationships will also be important as I pursue my career in elementary education. Sioux Falls has been wonderful in everything it has to offer for the younger generations. I am forever grateful for Roosevelt High School as it has given me countless opportunities and rewarding experiences. I hope that each child and teen will receive the same chances that I had to grow friendships and interact with others in this community. Thank you for everything you do to ensure the best for future generations.
Thank you, Abby. Great job. Our second student today is Alex Panic from Washington. Alex is involved as a peer tutor, powerlifting, student council, principal advisory council, National Honor Society, Link Crew, Best Buddies, salsa. She volunteers at the Humane Society, works at Starbucks, and is very interested in reading and powerlifting. Alex plans to attend the University of Minnesota to focus on biochemistry and Spanish to be a physician's assistant in the future. Here to share a powerful story is Alex Panic. Welcome, Alex.
I would first like to thank you all for allowing me to join you guys the past Mondays. The opportunity has been a great honor, and I'm happy to have learned and sat with the people I did. Growing up, I really never understood the importance of a community or understood the meaning. I kind of just thought, my community is Sioux Falls, those are my neighbors, people where we live in close proximity. However, all of that changed for me last year in November when I lost my dad by suicide. My dad's involvement in the community has been very minimal. The farthest he's been known was a Lyft driver here, but nevertheless, he enjoyed what Sioux Falls has done for his family. He enjoyed the Cinco de Mayo festival at Falls Park. He enjoyed the Parade of Lights festival during the holidays, and nevertheless, there was always something to do with his family, whether the weather was cold or nice. The first outreach I had of a community was obviously my school, Washington. I missed school for 2 weeks, and they told me I had a place to go whenever my grief hit me. If I had a good day, if I had a bad day, I had a place and I had a face. They set up a meal drive for my family where we didn't have to think about what our next meal would be for an entire month. They also set up a GoFundMe that allowed my mom and my younger sister and I to get new furniture and start a new chapter in our life. However, the city of Sioux Falls had a greater impact on my mom and my other siblings because they don't go to Washington and they don't see the faces that I do. It was members from Feeding South Dakota, Lloyd Companies, Project Warm Up that helped my family, donated things, food, blankets, in a time of great pain and grief. It was also the Helpline Center and Live Inspired 365 that sent messages of ending the stigma behind mental health and sent messages of motivation and continuing our journey here without our dad and just being an uplifting spirit. It is because of people like you in this room and organizations and your great leadership that we're able to uplift my family and comfort my family in a time of loss, confusion, and hurt. I am proud to be amongst people and continue to live in the community that my father was not so in touch with, yet they honored him way more than he would have known. Thank you.
Thank you both for being part of Downtown Rotary and Rotarians. The small things over and over again truly make an impact. So I hope we all walk away with that today. I have a few Rotary reminders. First, on Thursday, March 30th, we will be having a More Than Mondays Rotary Social. It is at our wine bar. It runs from 4 to 6 p.m. Jen, thank you and your team for all of the work that you do to give us an opportunity to connect and be part of this mission outside of our Mondays. As we lean into the international piece of Rotary International, there are many opportunities to experience the mission of Rotary beyond the efforts that we have here locally. For example, there are still openings to go on the Rotary Friendship Exchange trip to Denmark. It is from July 1st through July 12th of this year. You can certainly reach out to Angie if you would like more information. And Tim Krominga, can they come and talk to you as well? Awesome, thank you. We are also looking at a friendship exchange trip to India in October of 2023 and a trip to the School of St. Jude in Tanzania, East Africa, May of 2024. It is not too early to start thinking about being a part of those incredible opportunities provided by your Rotary. Once again, we have the District 5610 raffle tickets for sale in the back of the room, and you can get a hold of those at the end of the meeting. I want to extend a thank you once again to Dan Kipley and to Bobby Tibbetts for leading the effort. We are, how many did you, about 50 away? Close to 50 away from our goal. So let's make that happen. Now I'd like to invite our panelists up. While they make their way, today is a continued conversation about the airport master planning and other aviation insights. We have our president-elect, Eric Ellefson, to moderate today's conversation. Eric is on the board of this organization, and we're so grateful, Dan, that you would be with us again, because there were so many individuals who wanted to hear more, learn more, know more. You can tell by the full room, they're here to learn and listen. Thank you both.
Thank you, President Cindy, and happy birthday. As Cindy mentioned, about a month ago, actually, exactly, if I look at the slide deck here, we forgot to update the date, but we were here talking about the airport, and like today, we had some wonderful junior Rotarians. I think we had 3 that day, maybe took a little bit more time than we were anticipating, so we get to be back here today, again, talking a little bit more about airports, about aviation, and for me, as an avid aviation enthusiast, I'm quite excited to talk more about airports. So let's get started. Dan, thank you very much for giving us more time.
Yeah, great to be back. I'll talk faster this time. Maybe.
We do have quite a few slides too, so we'll try and keep it moving, and I will allow time at the end for comments and questions from any of the Rotarians in the audience as well. So Dan, let's talk a little bit, just a little bit about you specifically. Give a quick, brief introduction, and then you run a wonderful team out at the airport as well. Maybe just mention a few of the key players.
Sure. Yeah, Dan Letellier. I've been the airport director here for just about 14 years. And in the 83 years the airport's been in operation, I'm only the 4th one, so I guess you're kind of stuck here for a while. So there haven't been that many. Grew up in South Dakota. Went to school in Kadoka, South Dakota, and college at university down the road, and then also in Rapid City. And started my career in aviation working for Northwest Airlines. I did that as a manager for about 23 years, and quite a few different cities across the country, and ended up closer to home as a local manager. And then I was fortunate at the time to be able to transition over into the airport director position. So been here a while. I guess that's good or bad for some people. But I'm very fortunate to have a very good team. I have a deputy director, Richard King. Maybe a lot of you have worked with him. Kristen Elgersma is our finance manager, and a new individual about a year now, Jonathan Perot, is our operations manager, and he's really been a great asset to have. And along with our 5-member airport board, we have a really great team, and looking forward to making the airport better.
How many total employees do we have out at the airport?
Contrary to popular opinion, there's only 32 employees that work directly for the airport authority. Everyone else has their own employees, so whether it's the airlines or the rental car operators or security, they all are employed by those groups.
I know our maintenance staff has put in some work this year as we've gotten the airport ready during some of the storms that we've had.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. We had quite a few people retire last summer, so 60% of our snow removal crew had never even worked at an airport before. So it was a bit of a challenge to get them up and running. They've had far more experience than maybe they normally would have throughout a winter season. So hopefully that's taken care of for a while. But yeah, we really have, we're very fortunate in a tight labor market to get our folks here that we have. We are a little bit short-staffed and looking to continue to fill. But yeah, we've had a pretty good winter so far, and hopefully we're on the tail end of it.
Well, great. Well, just a couple quick stats. I mentioned a few of these just before, but for anyone who wasn't in the audience that day, the airport's continuing to see, much like the city is seeing, a ton of economic development and a ton of economic growth. We have currently 14 destinations across 5 airlines in nonstop locations. We've got 6 destinations that were just added in the past 2 years, and I think LA is coming on in August?
Actually starts first part of June.
First part of June,
Just for
we'll
the
have
summer.
another direct flight there. We had an all-time record for employments of 600 and almost 12,000, and we're trending above that this year. We just had a board meeting on Thursday. Where are we at from last year's numbers already?
Yeah, we had a really good month in January, 22% ahead of normal. February was 8% ahead of last year. Year-to-date, 15% ahead of 2022, which was a record year. So we have about 11 out of the last 12 months where we've had monthly employment records.
All right, well, that brings us to our first topic. Hopefully, if I can run this thing. Might have to have Dan. We'll work on that. There we go. We'll talk parking. So we've got a brand new parking garage that's going to start. Obviously, if you've been to the airport, and I mentioned this before, there's a little bit of challenges happening right now. But maybe just give us an update on where we are for starting this project, and maybe a little bit of the history behind how we got here.
Yeah, parking is kind of like chasing a rabbit. It's you never quite catch it. And with our growth we've seen, employment growth over the last 10, 15 years, parking demands have increased along with that. Back in 2011, we completely reconfigured our long and short-term lot. That winter, we already found out we didn't have enough parking, so the very next summer we added 800 spaces in a new economy lot, and that did take us over the next several years adequate number of spaces for parking, but we knew that that wasn't going to be the end of it. One of the most popular comments we would get is, when are you going to build a parking garage? And so we went through numerous studies, looking at long-term parking requirements. What's the best way to address that? Whether it's additional surface parking, whether it's a vertical parking garage. Ultimately, we decided to go forward with the parking garage, and then where do you put it, the size of it. So a lot of analysis and study in determining when to construct a parking garage and where. And so ultimately that we settled on a 4-level, just about 1,000 stall parking structure. You put it where everybody wants to park, which is right in front of the building, so that's where it's going, and where the short-term lot is. Construction would add about a gain of about 700 spaces over what we had before. Prior to the parking garage, we realized we needed to replace some parking during construction, so in 2021, we added another 600 spaces onto the economy lot. Well, about a week and a half ago, those 600 spaces were completely full. So we were about 50, 60 spaces from filling all of our parking lot. And so as a result, we're adding 500 more spaces onto the economy lot this summer, so that by next winter, hopefully we have enough room for everybody during construction. Because we'll be taking out about 750 spaces here most of this year. Next winter, we should narrow that down to about 600 spaces. But it's going to be an impact for everyone. But construction starts April 3rd, about an 18-month project that will wrap up hopefully by October 2024, if not sooner.
And we're already starting to block off some of the short-term parking if you've been out to the airport.
Yeah, I actually started last week. The first 300 spaces, part of short-term and some of long-term are blocked off. And then after Easter, we'll take another 450 spaces. So it's going to be interesting for quite some time.
So cast that vision for what we're building toward, not necessarily where we are today. South Dakota parking, we expect to be like right in front of the door. We are running shuttles though, correct? We have shuttles back and forth.
Yeah, we certainly have had one all winter long. We typically do, but we're actually adding some additional shuttles that'll go just to and from the economy lot, so that there will always be one continuously going back and forth to the economy lot, where most of the people will have to park, but try to minimize the time that's required.
We've got a couple slides. There's an additional part of the project. Obviously, the parking ramp is the main structure, but you're also going to notice a brand new kind of entrance into the main terminal. Talk us through the Sky Bridge and maybe some of the changes that are going to happen along JC Lane there.
Yeah, so one of the enhancements along with the parking garage was to be considered was whether we would have a Skyway connection to that after the bids were received. I mean, it's something that I think everybody wanted to, all the board and everybody involved wanted to add. It was just a factor of the cost involved. And so even though the cost of the parking garage was quite a bit higher than we anticipated, the board elected to move forward with the Skyway connection, which I think everyone will appreciate when it's all said and done. It'll provide a direct connection from the second level of the parking garage directly into the terminal building right in front. To accommodate that, we are adding out from the main doors out towards the curb to be able to receive that Skyway connection. There'll be elevators on both sides, as well as escalators on the terminal side to get you to and from the Skyway connection. So, next time you come back from Costa Rica in your flip-flops, you'll be able to go right to your car and you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you'll be good.
Right. You brought up cost. I just want everyone in this room, professionals, knows CIP programming and things like that. I think when we first started looking at the expansion for a parking garage, we were at around $25 million is what we were putting in the CIP. And I think the project led at $65 million is what it's going to take to build this structure. So construction costs, obviously we're all feeling them if you've had a construction project. Let's transition into the master plan. So we covered this a little bit, and I just want to for anyone that's new in the audience, let's talk about the reason behind the master plan, maybe the process that we go through for the master plan, and then how often do we do this?
Well, first of all, the FAA requires airports, commercial service airports, to conduct a master plan. Basically looks at your near-term, medium-term, long-term forecast horizons, planning horizons. So anywhere from 10 to 15 years, 20 years out. I think the last one we had completed was 2013, so it's been about 10 years since we've conducted the last master plan. So, the process involved is basically looking at your forecasted passenger enplanements if you're a commercial service airport, freight, flight operations, both general aviation, commercial aviation, military if you have that. So then establishing your forecast for the next 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and then matching that up with the facilities that you have, whether it's terminal facilities, cargo, air traffic, runways, taxiways, and try to make sure that you've identified as your growth anticipates, you have projects planned out to accommodate that growth.
And where are we at right now in the process?
Well, we're really, I guess, step 3. So we've been working on it about 18 months, and we're identified a lot of the alternatives. Right now, we're in the process of kind of providing some of the updates to the public on where we're at, some of the getting public input on that, and then trying to put together a financing plan and schedule these anticipated projects out and to make sure that they are completed when they're needed. So probably by late this summer, we'll be wrapping that up. Ultimately, it goes to the FAA for review and then final approval.
So nothing's perfect when you dig into plans and you do this forward kind of vision or forward thinking side of things. What were the key, let's call them areas of opportunity that came up within Mead and Hunt's kind of recommendations to us?
Yeah. Well, we are bordered on 3 sides by water, a major city thoroughfare, and a railroad to top that off. And then we have the Air National Guard kind of anchoring the south portion of the airfield property. So there really is no additional land that we can easily access for growth. Fortunately for us, our 2 primary runways are more than adequate as far as length and width for any future expected requirements. So we're in good shape from a runway standpoint. So we're really not necessarily, needing more land for that. But all the users involved, certainly that's a different story. So we look at our needs for passenger traffic, whether it's terminals, concourse. We look at cargo facilities, the cargo apron, the sortation warehouses. We look at needs for air traffic control, South Dakota Air National Guard, and what future missions they may have and their needs. So, but we are constrained with the safety surfaces that we have, near the runways and taxiways, the approach surfaces that we have. That gobbles up most of our 1,500 acres. So there's not a lot of land left to use. And some of those areas highlighted in blue are some of those areas, potential areas for possible future development. You have Area 1 is really kind of the north of the terminal facility that encompasses a lot of our general aviation hangars in the cargo area. If you follow to the south, Area 4, just directly north of the Air National Guard, that is area that could be developed. It's just very restricted obviously, trying to get to that location. The same with Area 3. We'd actually have to construct a bridge over the river to access that location. And then Area 2 probably is the most open and available for future development and trying to right-size or identify what should go there. Right now, very large general aviation or cargo facilities would be identified in that area. So not a lot of ground to work with on the airport property.
So we have 1,500 acres though total, and I think for this room, just whoever's not at the airport, kind of on a more intimate basis there. The green checkered dot obviously is Minnesota Avenue. If you come up by Area 2 up there, you've got the South Dakota Army National Guard. From the little triangles that come off of the end of the runways, those are the approach planes, the approach paths, that ultimately there's a certain level from the FAA side of things, is as you're landing an airplane, you have to be certain height restrictions, so the development out on those areas is limited for us. But we do have another parcel of land, do we not, at the end of runway 15? Is it 15 I'm looking
Yeah,
at?
just on the north side of the river channel, south of 60th Street. We do own all that farmland, and again, the purpose for that, again, is to just control the development in that area, so homes, that type of thing, that we would not be comfortable having in that area or not developed.
And logistics, that would be up by J&L Harley, up in that area on that hillside, kind of off 60th, and then heading down towards the Sanford Sports Complex down there. You brought up the military. So one thing that I hear quite often, just being a former Air National Guard member, what's the agreement with the South Dakota A&G and with the Army National Guard with regards to how they work with the airport? Do we own the land? Do they own the land? Do they lease the land?
Yeah.
What's that term look like?
The airport owns the land, and then we have long-term leases with United States Air Force, and the Army Guard is a bit of a subset of that. But South Dakota Air National Guard has a long-term lease for the ground, for the base that they're on, as well as the Army Guard on the north side. I think they run through just about to 2050 currently. And then every 10 years we have an operating agreement with them, a joint use agreement. We're a joint use airport, so obviously a commercial service airport, but also a military base. And that joint use agreement provides them basically a lease of the ground to operate with. I think it did go up. It was $1 every 10 years, but I think it did go up to like $25 or something like that. But they provide a very valuable service to us. They provide the fire station, the emergency air fire rescue services for us. That if we had to fund that and staff it ourselves, would be, certainly $4 to $5 million a year added expense to us. But the South Dakota Air National Guard does an excellent job, obviously, and they maintain that for us.
So that's a win-win relationship ultimately for the city of Sioux
Yeah,
Falls as well as for
absolutely.
the military side.
Absolutely, yes.
Let's transition a little bit into probably the biggest outcome from the master plan, and that's the recommendation for an expanded terminal. So we briefly touched on this, and I'm just going to do a recap so that we can get through the rest of the conversation today. But what you're looking at on the screen today is the orange, if it's an orangish color, is the existing terminal. And what you're seeing on the end of that is what we're calling a hammerhead, phase 1 hammerhead, and then another extension there in position A as a growth option for us as we continue to add to the airport. So Dan, talk us about option 3 and how we got here, and maybe just a little bit more insight on the terminal itself.
So one of the primary factors that we wanted to review in our master plan really was the future usability of the terminal itself as we continue to grow, and the growth obviously is going to grow. I think in the next 10 years, add another 200,000 employments per year, and that's just the forecast. But obviously that comes with additional flights. So we created a subset of the master plan, a terminal area study that looked at again utilizing the forecast we have, and then how that impacted our facility. What basically passenger volume we can accommodate now, which really in many cases, especially early morning, if you ever left at 6 in the morning, or midday when there's 2 Allegiant flights, you would certainly agree that we probably need to add on to the facility. But the study did an in-depth review of our terminal facility, the ticketing area, the baggage screening area, the baggage claim, but also the concourse and gate area. And while there's some expansion there, like in item D that's highlighted, even baggage claim, at some point, those areas do need to be expanded, but the most critical need was providing additional gates. Right now we have seven gates, 7 jet bridges currently. In the next 15 years, the forecast would require up to 14 gates, so double what we have now. And so to get to that point, obviously we're not going to do it all at the same time, but to try to phase that over time. And they looked at 3 different scenarios. One was really utilizing when the original concept of the concourse was really a Y concept, and we've been operating out of one leg of that Y since 1970. And so they looked at, well, let's just expand on that and add the second leg of that Y. That creates some challenges. Certainly it's inefficient when it comes to parking aircraft. And constructability, we would have to rework or reconstruct a lot of some of the existing building to make that happen, to add to the cost. From the last master plan, we identified a T concept, so basically adding on to what the concourse we have, but extending that to the south, and then a new connection, main corridor to that new concourse. While that sounds great, trying to operate out of your current facility while you're doing all of that, and just the expense and the additional phasing, really that came in a distant third. So we ended up with a kind of modified Y concept. Again, trying to minimize the disruption to the current operation, to only try to take down one gate at a time during this 18-month project. So letter A there is identified as the new concourse that we would add on. It would provide us a total of 6 gates, or a net gain of 5 gates. And then as time went on, we would add on to the existing concourse in letter C by having additional gates available from the first phase, then be less of an impact to operations by adding on to the end. So all that sounds well and good until they give us the estimated price tag. And you know, a few years ago, that probably would have been about $30 million project, something not out of the realm of our ability to fund or finance, but now it's about $130 million. And which is, at first you kind of go, well, that's ridiculous, how can it be that much? Until you start looking at other airports in the upper Midwest that have recently bid projects similar to ours, and that's just what it is. It's not the West Coast, it's not the East Coast, it's same geographic area, and that's what costs are coming in at. So that's well beyond what we as an airport can fund, so we'd have to look at trying to slice and dice this into multiple phases and try to still get some usability out of it while we ultimately get to that full expansion. And then just trying to put together a financing plan to get that accomplished.
You'll be hearing a lot more about that in the months and I would say even years to come. It started already this year in the legislation, just trying to get some funding allocated. That was shot down, but I'm sure it'll be back on the ballot for next year, back on the docket. Focusing on just the picture that you're seeing here, this is a future version now, looking at where the parking garage will be, the parking all around that, and then ultimately looking at both phases of the growth of the terminal building itself. And then you have to show an interior picture as well, because there is something.
You know, the battery.
Yeah, I know. The benefits, the amenities that will be added to the airport are also really nice. So we think often about the cost, but we also have to think about the reward for that. And so with that becomes an airport that looks more modern, that functions more modern, that accommodates the traffic that we have coming in and out of the airport, not only today, but then also the expansion that we're anticipating over the next decade. Right. Let's switch over to the next. Sorry, no, we really got some slaps here. The tower itself. So our tower out at the airport was the second kind of item that was identified as something that we need to be thinking of. Just a little bit of history. Our tower was built in 1966, 67 area. It is what obviously controls all the air traffic that flows not only through our airspace, but obviously in and around down into the ground at FSD here. Talk to us about where we are with that and why this is actually on our docket for consideration in the years ahead.
Yeah, well, you know, the current tower, again, is fairly dated. It is owned and operated by the FAA Air Traffic Control Division. So ultimately, it's up to the FAA to allocate the funding to replace it. But it's a pretty standard cookie cutter type tower that if you go to several other airports in the Midwest, you'll see one identical to that. The main concern with that is obviously inside the facilities are fairly dated, but the height is quite a bit shorter than it needs to be. And it does impact our ability to grow. So as we're looking at, we'll talk about in a minute, you know, expansion of our cargo facilities, we're somewhat limited because they need to have, the tower needs to have line of sight to the end of the runway. Well, we are limited on the height that we can build those possible new warehouses because of the height of our tower. And that's true for other parts of the airfield as well. So the limited sight lines that are available with the current tower are an issue. So they're, part of the master plan was to identify, so again, at some point the tower will need to be replaced, but to identify locations, potential locations for a new tower, to set that parcel of land aside in case we do get to that point. We did look at 4 different locations on the airfield with the master plan. Number 1 on there is the current location, or by the current location next to the terminal apron. Item 2, I guess maybe the Sanford folks haven't heard about this yet, but a potential use of their lands by some of the new artificial turf baseball fields across the river channel. And then back on the airfield near the new or soon-to-be discontinued fire training facility there, that's number 3. And then 4 and 5, again, are possibilities, but again, just access to those being on the Air Guard base or just off the Air Guard ramp really make it difficult to access those locations, but those were identified as potential sites. But sites 1 and 2 are probably the leading contenders. The FAA is beginning a study in May that will try to identify potential sites. Ultimately, it's up to them and their process of identifying sites. The square footage they need is much larger footprint. They need up to 3 acres for a site, which again makes it difficult to find those locations for them to do that. But that process will start. The infrastructure package that was passed a couple of years ago does provide $5 billion for new towers, and they're hoping to tap into that to be able to construct a new tower that's considerably taller than what we have now.
So more to come, a lot of work to do yet on that, but
Yep.
preliminary stages are kind of put into place right now.
Just starting, yes. Yep.
We'll skip past the compatibility side of things. Can you give me the next slide, please? Actually, 2 forward. You mentioned air cargo. So we talked about 2 different audiences of the airport right now. We talked just general consumer, those of us in the room who fly in and out of KFSD. We talked a little bit about the military side. Cargo is probably the 3rd area. Talk us a little bit about where we are with cargo right now, and maybe share just a little bit of the revenue side. Does UPS, FedEx, how do we make money off of those guys flying their airplanes in and out of our airport?
Well, not enough, but so yeah, key users of the airport, UPS and FedEx both have extensive operations here in Sioux Falls, especially if you were to come out and look at their operations early in the morning or late in the evening. I mean, everybody talks about seeing the FedEx or UPS aircraft fly in over town. I mean, they do fly the largest aircraft we have using the airport. They're Airbus A300 or Boeing 767, so there's no doubt when you see one of those in the sky. But they're major players handling freight here. In 2021, with kind of the boom of air commerce, we had record years for freight handled as well as mail. And so in 2022, we had, depends the most impressive numbers you want to use, 62 million pounds of freight were transported in 2022, 32,000 tons or 29,000 metric tons. I mean, pick your number. And that's down a little bit from our record year in 2021. So certainly e-commerce from COVID drove a lot of that product that was transported through Sioux Falls. That has certainly gone down in 2022, and even so far this year, again, those numbers continue to dwindle. But part of the master plan, again, looks at forecasts, and the amount of freight in the next 10 years is expected to double. So how can we better situate ourselves to handle that volume in cargo? Part of that is by expanding the cargo apron. You're looking at a shot here of an expansion to the south of our current cargo apron, plus a reconfiguring of how the aircraft park to get better utilization out of that. Right now, you're looking at kind of the UPS side of the operation, where they typically have 1, sometimes two aircraft here on the ground at the same time. And then they have all these feeder aircraft that come from all over South Dakota, and whether it's Winter or Valentine or Aberdeen, Pierre, Rapid City, all over the Midwest. They come and then they feed the mothership UPS to go to and from Louisville. It also goes to Calgary, Canada. And then FedEx does the same thing on the north part of there. You see 2 aircraft parked. But really the long-term strategy is to be able to accommodate at least 2 large wide-body aircraft, both on the north and the south, and then ability to grow. So whether Amazon Prime wants to start up operations here or even additional growth beyond that. But the pavement you see added on there is, again, parking locations for all the smaller twin-engine turbo aircraft that, again, feed the larger aircraft. So the first step is expanding the cargo apron to the south. The blue hangar there is a future sortation warehouse, again, targeting UPS or Amazon for their use. But right now we have several airport buildings there that would be demolished, and then we would work with a third-party developer to come in and construct that warehouse and then lease it back to UPS or Amazon.
Obviously, we're in a time of complete innovation within aviation as well. So as we look at this and we kind of fast forward, and this is forward thinking, United and Archer Aviation just this last week announced an agreement in Chicago to start flying air taxis. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of the UAV, the air taxi kind of conversation coming into aviation in the next couple of years. Would not surprise me personally if we don't see more of that UAV air taxi transport regionally. We're getting rid of a lot of the regional kind of flights in general and starting to move towards the bigger bodied aircraft and cutting out some of that regional stuff. Maybe there's a backfill for those.
Yeah.
We can talk about that for a whole nother presentation, but let's go forward and talk about general aviation. So that's the last kind of audience or user of the airport. General aviation would be all the private aircraft that are out there. That's going to be your Maverick Air through Sanford. That's going to be your Signature Air, another FBO there, as well as the mechanic shops and the private plane owners and the corporate jet owners, all of those individuals. And the airport is really cut up into 2 main sections for general aviation, starting with the west, which is going to be out by Maverick. Talk us through just a little bit about what we're planning to do there.
Yeah, so we've grown quite a bit. For years, our primary general aviation area for development was on the east side near Signature, now Signature Aviation. But about 10 years ago, Maverick Airs started up as a competitor to Signature. And since that time, again, it's a wide open area at the time for future development, in which we've seen not only Maverick and Sanford add facilities there, recently Billion and now Tri-Fly or CMB operations as a very large hangar there. And we're in discussions with several other folks on adding some similar size hangars in that same area. But this is really kind of the last area where we have a footprint to work with for development of some larger corporate hangars. So as we look at kind of further to the north of Maverick, Sanford there in the darker blue and light blue, and then all the way further to the north by the river channel. Those are potential areas for new hangar development. There's also the possibility if somebody wants to come and have a large aircraft maintenance facility, it could be catered to that as well. But right now, with part of the master plan, it's for larger corporate hangars.
What stands out to me is when we talk about being landlocked, we still have a lot of growth opportunities, whether that's through reconfiguring our existing kind of footprint or just simply maximizing the available space that we do have across that 1,500 acres. Let's get quickly into, can you go to the next slide, please? There we go. Let's talk about the east. So the east would be just basically off of the tower area, right off the parking, where the parking garage is going to be. Talk a little bit about that area.
Well, it's really one that's probably the most challenging, and certainly if you're a current hangar owner, probably one that more concerning to you. But right now, access to this area is somewhat hindered by hangars that are current hangars, and it limits some of the size of the corporate aircraft that can actually access this part of the airfield. Along with that, we have 2 major water lines. We're the home to about 22 city wells. So all that water gets piped through the underground through the airport down to the treatment plant. So it does hinder some development as well in this area. But looking at how we can best maximize future development in this area with larger corporate hangars would require the removal or relocation of a couple large hangars to access that. Also, it identifies kind of in the reddish there, more surface parking that would be tacked on to the existing long-term lot and a new JC lane that would feed around that to the terminal building. So between all that extra parking from the parking garage and the economy lot, actually we're just about as far as we can go south. You'll be by the water treatment plant and making your trek up to the terminal building when we're done. But this does provide us some potential for additional surface parking.
Well, GA obviously is the last one. Just really quick, let's hit on the next steps for where we are with the master plan and when do we plan on wrapping this up?
Again, so now once we've identified a lot of the preferred alternatives, we'll be working on kind of sequencing those projects into our long-term capital plan, and then looking at funding sources, whether that's from the FAA and the Airport Improvement Program. There certainly are some other infrastructure programs available we might be able to competitively participate in. But again, we also be looking for new revenue sources as well, whether that's state, city, county, that type of thing, participation. The airport itself, the state did an economic impact study in 2020, and I think you have a slide that shows that. Just the Sioux Falls Regional Airport had over $400 million a year economic impact to the Sioux Falls area. The entire state airports had over a $900 million economic impact. So obviously, whether that's tourism, business, or just leisure travel, has an incredible cascading impact on the community. And when we're looking at a $130 million project to be able to continue to grow, to meet the forecasted growth and not only population growth, but that translates into travelers, we certainly need to look at all of our partners to help with that growth.
Well, it's definitely a topic that we could continue to talk about, but a lot of growth happening. Obviously, it's matching the demand that the city has been feeling over the last few years. Let's open it up to audience questions. We've got a little bit of time, so Angie's got a microphone. Is there anybody in the audience that have a question?
Thank you. This is a little bit in the future thinking, but I have an interest in Internet of Things. I did my master's in it. And Amazon recently announced Amazon drones to deliver packages. Will those drones be governed by airports? Will there be a facility at the airport? Is that something that you have looked into?
Well, the FAA would be responsible for developing regulations and rules to manage that drone activity in general. I mean, it's not just Amazon and their drones, but there's so many commercial uses, emergency uses for drones. And so, we may not notice it much here, but obviously in larger urban areas, they're well on their way in utilizing drones for a lot of different activities. But the FAA is actively, and they should be rolling out they've been working on it for several years, but really rules and regulations for drone operators. So, what altitude that you're able to take as far as use of the drones, how you communicate to those drones, whether it's in line of sight or if you can go beyond line of sight. There's a lot of technology as far as identifying who that drone is, because some of the challenges, if there's a drone that is not where it's supposed to be, being able to immediately track that drone, whose drone it belongs to, and where is that operator from. So there are a lot of, it's an extremely challenging effort, but they're on the tail ends of establishing all those rules and regulations so that really the use of drones can take off. To answer your question, no, the uniqueness of a drone is you can operate that from anywhere. You know, you don't have to operate it as an airport. We're not looking to be a drone hub. If anything, we want drones as far as away from the airport, the way we currently utilize aircraft.
Maybe one more question.
Do you have a sense of the volume of cargo coming in versus cargo going out?
It's certainly, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's far more cargo coming in than going out. Just there's, you know, from a manufacturing or product standpoint, there just isn't as much. Pharmaceuticals, I heard, are one of the largest small package items that go out. But it's what percentage? It's a far more greater volume of freight coming in, and then, like I said, it's either trucked out of here or it's provided on a feeder aircraft to go all over the state.
Well, join me in saying thank you to Dan for giving us some time today and talking aviation.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we could have this continued conversation. Next week's conversation, Healthcare on the Horizon. Paul Hansen and Dave Fleechek will be joining us. I hope you all have a tremendous week. Thanks for the love a little bit earlier. Rotary is adjourned.